Jonathan, how you doing? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm excellent. How you doing?
Great, thanks. That was a very nice thing with the Director of Education state.
Yeah, it was nice that she took time out to come and visit one of our schools.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, very nice. She's a very nice person and very effective in our state.
Absolutely.
So family, okay with family?
Everyone's well.
Very good.
Knock on wood. What about you? How are the grandbabies?
Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
Yep.
Absolutely unbelievable. Now you have 2 grandbabies?
I now have 3.
Whoa!
Exactly. Never gets old. Never gets old.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Our oldest grandchild is 29, and our youngest one is 20 months.
You're right. You keep saying that, right? So that's a bit of a range.
Eight kids.
Uh-huh.
8 so
It
far.
never gets old, but it gets expensive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but it's worth it, Marge. A lot of fun.
I didn't say it wasn't worth it, John. I'm just saying that it doesn't get,
Oh no, it doesn't get cheap.
it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
We have and this is not, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but we've even set up their education for their futures.
That's right.
Okay, I think I just noticed that Victor arrived, so I think we're all here. And if you'll all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We will begin tonight's meeting with public comment. And so if anyone has public comment, I do have one person who asked to speak tonight. Greg, if you are here and you're able to go to participants and raise the blue hand, I believe that is the way that Kate can unmute you so that you can speak. And if there is anyone else who is planning to speak at public comment, please do the same and we will unmute you. I see Melanie Lane. I don't see Greg Tinsworth yet, but we will keep an eye out for you. And why don't we start with Melanie Lane? Kate, are you able to unmute her? Maybe I am.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
We can hear you. Hi. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. My name is Melanie Lane, and I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. I work for the school department. I've been employed from Bristol Warren for the past 14 years, and I've had the opportunity to work at Hugh Cole Elementary School, Colt Andrews Elementary School, and since 2016, I've been at the high school. And I have to just say, I absolutely love what I do, who I work with, the students and families that I serve. I'm just really looking at speaking out tonight on behalf of all of the social workers for the Bristol Warren Regional School Department. So we drafted a letter together, and I'm the one that drew the short story. So in this pandemic, we're reminded more than ever of the challenges that our families, students, teachers, and staff may face daily due to added stressors. We are living in unprecedented times. As school social workers, we're keenly aware of a wide array of issues, from food and income insecurities to issues of compromised physical and emotional health. Now more than ever, schools function as a place to gain comfort and a sense of normalcy. However, to say that schools should run as they had been traditionally and historically would be short-sighted. As a school community, we are now tasked with meeting the needs of students and families that have emerged in this global pandemic. In a recent statement made by the district, the long-term goal of identifying mastery was a topic. Although mastery can never be understated, COVID is at our doorstep, and it seems to be here for a long while. We are confident that given a different time in our world, these are attainable goals. However, we are cautionary. Due to our current culture and the changes we have had to make within our school climate, teaching and connecting through a computer is not the same as in-person connection. We would like to highlight the need for using a compassionate and trauma-informed lens as we look at desirable outcomes for the school year. As a community of students, families, teachers, and staff, many of us are struggling to meet our most basic needs related to health and safety. As the restraints of COVID continue, we are seeing an uprising in mental health related issues such as anxiety and depression. In our current times, we believe it would be most sensitive and validating to consider shifting our focus from mastery to cohesiveness and optimal psychosocial functioning. Looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs model, if basic human needs are not being met, mastery will never be achieved. Brain-based research further emphasizes this point. It demonstrates that learning and memory consolidation is inversely proportional to the amount of stress you're experiencing. So in other words, high stress is corrosive and toxic, especially when it's felt to be inescapable and a threat to our safety. We would like to end with a quote from Dr. I believe it's Kluge, K-L-U-G-E, from the World Health Organization, Regional Director of Europe. In a press statement he released, with disruptive effects of COVID, including social distancing, currently dominating our daily lives, it's important that we check on each other, call, video chat. We're mindful of and sensitive to the unique mental health needs of those we care for. Our anxiety and fears should be acknowledged. It shouldn't be ignored, but better understood and addressed by individuals, communities, and governments. During these stressful times, they're unpredictable. We must remember each of us is doing our best. We hope that you will take into careful consideration our concerns and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing that. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. I am going through the list. I did get a message from a Mr. Greg Tinsworth, who is going to be here to speak, only I don't see him on the list. So I'm not sure what to do. If anyone else sees him and can give me a signal that I'm missing him.
Madam Chair,
Ryan?
can we get a copy of the letter that Ms. Lane just wrote so that we can add it into the record for the meeting today?
Yes, you know what? I just assumed that we would, but Helen, if you are able to do that, that would be great. And then every committee member could have one so that we can really look at it.
And
Yeah.
the superintendent would actually like a copy as well.
Sure thing.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm feeling terrible about Greg, but I don't know what to do because I don't see him here.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there may be a thing that if the person called in, there's no way to maybe raise your hand if you're just using your phone. So we could make a request if anyone on the phone would like to unmute and ask to possibly make a public comment. Maybe that would work.
Yes, thank you. And you just did that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if there was something else that we needed to do.
We're trying to do that. I don't know if
That's great. I'm going to go down the list one more time, and then I think we'll have to move on. And I will reach out to him to see if he would like to have a conversation. outside of the meeting. Okay, yeah, I don't see his name, so, okay. So with that, I do not see any other hands up for public comments, so we will now move on. And I would like to ask for a motion to seal tonight's executive session minutes.
Motion to seal.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Saviano, seconded by Mr. Bradshaw. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Now we will move on to the consent agenda. We generally do not have conversation about these items unless a specific school committee member wants something taken out, in which case we would remove it from the regular consent agenda and vote on that separately. That is not the case tonight, so we will vote on the consent agenda as a whole. Can I get?
So moved.
Second.
I'm not sure who moved that.
I did.
Aye.
Thank you.
McBride did.
Okay, thank you. Motion made by Mrs. McBride, seconded by Mr. Bradshaw. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'm not sure if that was in the vote. I heard a sound, but that was that. Did anyone on the school committee oppose that? Okay, thank you. Mr. Dr. Bryce, would you like to say a few words
Yes.
before we move on?
Absolutely. So first of all, I would like to very much welcome some of our newest members to the Bristol Warren regional family. And so let me start by mentioning we now have a new director of facilities. His name is Thomas Wood. Mr. Wood is an accomplished professional with over 30 years of experience in facilities and construction management. He is a licensed architect holding a certification in 3 states and has significant experience in design and construction. Previously, he was the director of facilities for the Montpelier Public School District in Montpelier, Vermont. In that position, he was responsible for capital planning, budgeting, administration, and as well as the recruitment and training of district maintenance and custodial staff. He is currently doing some work for CBRE group responsible for preventative maintenance and routine repair of TD Bank facilities in Vermont and upstate New York. Based on his experience and skills, we think he's going to make a great addition to the BWRSD leadership team and our district. And we'd like to welcome Mr. Thomas Wood to our team. The next person that we want to welcome to our team is Nicole Lyons. Nicole Lyons is a career and college coordinator. I think the cheers that you hear are the cheers and applause from our high school principal as well as others. Ms. Lyons is currently the supervisor of academics and instruction at the William N. Davies Career and Technical High School and has been employed in that capacity since 2016. Prior to that, she was an English teacher at Davies High School, LaSalle Academy, and Rogers High School. She holds a bachelor's of education from Providence College, a master's of education focusing on education administration from Providence, and she also has obtained her doctorate from the University of Rhode Island in May of 2019. She has experience working with CTE staff members, and we expect that she's going to bring her experience working with them to really help us build a robust pathway for our young people that is going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to help all of our graduates to see themselves and see a way for them to gain meaningful employment when they graduate. I am just very, very excited for this Mount Hope graduate to come home and to be able to work with our students and staff and businesses in the local community. We really expect that she's going to have a tremendous impact on what we can do in the career and technology education world. And so we'd like to welcome both Thomas Wood and Nicole Lyons to the Bristol Warren Regional School District team. Thank you very much, school committee.
And welcome to Nicole and Thomas on behalf of the school committee as well. So happy to have you.
I'm sure Tina's calling them right now or is about to.
As soon as we're done, I will. Yep.
Nicole is here, I think.
Is Nicole here?
Yeah, Nicole is here.
She is.
So we could, I don't know if we want to spotlight her for a second so we can all actually wave to her or something. I don't know.
Or we can just say congratulations, Nicole, so we're not putting her on the
There
spot.
she is. There she is. Okay.
Congratulations and welcome to Bristol Warren. So happy to have you.
Welcome home.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you.
And so thank you very much.
Okay, so we can move on. We're going to have a discussion and possible action on the FY21 network infrastructure refresh next. So I guess I should get a motion in case we do have an action.
Yeah, I so moved that we accept the requests of the technology department to make infrastructure upgrades.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. McBride, seconded by Mr. Bradshaw. Discussion? Mr. Ramos?
I think I would like just to ask if either Ms. Muller or Dr. Bryce or anybody else from the administration team could spend a minute or two just describing what it is that is being requested here, the reasons for it, and whether this was something that was in our plan already or something that came up unexpectedly.
Absolutely. So I think first what I'll do is do a pretty high level and then turn it over to our Director of Technology, Rose Muller. So the request is for a total of $41,561, which is currently already in the technology budget to replace hardware. So this is a request that is already budgeted. What we want to do is we want to focus on continuously improving network infrastructure, and Director Muller and her team have looked at, and as they continue to build out the infrastructure, making sure that it is as safe as possible. They've identified that there's some equipment that is at the end of life, and that if it is not replaced, it potentially could lead to a pretty significant failure. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Rose and her team.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We have a network storage device that currently hosts virtual servers. What we would like to do is replace that with 2 servers, and that would be redundant for our environment. The network storage device is end of life. The warranty is up this year, and it will no longer be supported by the vendor. So it's critical that we replace that. If we lose that device at this point in time, we will have downtime. So this was in the budget for last year. Dr. Bryce asked me if we could wait on that, and considering that we did have another year with the warranty, we were able to do so. Also, we have a number of battery backups that we identified were not in place, and we need to get those put into place. Mr. Ramos, if you would like something a little bit more technical, Mr. Lass is on the call with us, and he is our network engineer that serves in the capacity that helps us plan for our network plan.
I don't need anything more technical necessarily, but maybe others might. I don't know. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Rose. Mr. Bradshaw?
So thank you, Madam Chair. So if I notice, Ms. Muller, from the memo, the current storage area network device that goes out of warranty this year is a single point of failure, which is what you mentioned will provide downtime. And the 2 Dell servers, I have a couple questions. Just want to confirm for everybody tonight what I think I remember from the last time we discussed it, that the two servers are going to share the load, but they have enough capacity so that if either one of them failed, that the load from the failed device can be shifted over via a switch or something and could run on that backup device. Is that correct?
Yep, that is true. And I think Jim would really enjoy having a little conversation with you. Jim, could you talk with Mr. Bradshaw for a moment?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so the main situation is we have an Ecologic SAN that is out of warranty. And the big concern is that if we pop more than 2 drives on that SAN, sourcing that equipment is very difficult in a timely manner. So that SAN basically runs all of Active Directory, which is connected to Aspen, which is connected to Google. Basically, it's the whole enchilada, you know what I mean? So if we pop that SAN, we don't have a 4-hour warranty. Those drives could not be replaced within 4 hours. We'd have to source them from somewhere else and we'd be scrambling. So the idea is to get some equipment in that's under warranty, and that equipment itself would be 2 Dell hosts. Each Dell host would have a RAID 10 array of SSD drives in each host. It'd be in the VMware environment. It would be backed up to the high school as well. And we'd have Active Directory spread across both hosts in the event of a failure. We'd have nightly Veeam replication from one host to the other host. So we pretty much trying to save money by not having to replace the SAN. If we were to go down that road, it would probably be about $90,000. So we're really trying to squeeze it right now because honestly, most of our stuff is going to the cloud. So that's where we're marching forward to. But this is kind of the best way we could save money and stay redundant at this time. I don't know if that helps.
How long are the warranties for the 2 Dell servers?
We could ask Ryan that, but I think you guys looked at a 5-year, which, well, it's minimum 3 years. I think it's purchased with 5 and it can be extended to 7. So the goal is not to make it to 7. We want to keep it probably around 5.
Okay. And do you back up those servers like every
Correct.
night you do a backup?
Yeah, correct. So we have a Veeam environment, and that Veeam environment replicates those servers across to the high school to a QNAP NAS device or a little mini SAN over iSCSI. It's about 45 terabytes of space sitting at the high school. We also have one of those at the middle school, so it backs up there and it sends it over to the high school. And we have Backupify, which sends the cloud data outside of the building. And we will be looking at something like Island or Quest to also get the Veeam just out of the state. So.
Okay. And I think my last comment, we didn't talk about the water damage server, but it looks like we have a server that was damaged by water. We think that the total cost is $10,000, but we expect that the interlocal trust is going to cover a part of that. And we're on the hook for a small portion. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Bradshaw.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the school committee have any other questions? And thank you to Rose and Jim as well.
No problem.
I see that there is a hand up. It is David Matheson. And David, can you nod if your question has to do with this agenda item on the tech refresh? Okay. Kate, can you unmute Mr. Matheson, please? Thank you.
Hey, just a really quick question. I think it was touched on a bit. I wonder if there's a broader like cloud migration strategy to this, like getting the school off of having to have like in-house servers for this kind of stuff. Is there a thought that it could be moved to like Azure Active Directory or something?
We have looked at Azure, but we haven't made that move yet because we're primarily a Google district, and truthfully, we would like to get rid of Active Directory. There are a number of things that we do need it for. For example, our printing solution at this point in time, we need Active Directory for. So we just have not made it as far as moving to the Azure solution.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious because it might alleviate some of your problems with availability if you move that off premise.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson, and thank you, Rose, again. Any other questions from school committee members? Okay, I don't see any hands up. So All in favor of approving the FY21 network infrastructure refresh?
Aye.
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 All opposed? If there are any opposed, could you raise your hand? Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to the subject of the superintendent's emergency powers. The reason this is on here tonight is because the superintendent, as in many districts, was granted emergency powers during the onset and duration. Well, it is still going, but the crucial stages of the pandemic, so that we could get the PPE, et cetera, that we needed when we needed it. And of course, before it ran out. So anyways, I'm gonna need a motion on this one too, because we will be taking action to potentially take those away.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Saviano, seconded by Mrs. Reish, and discussion.
So,
Mr. Bradshaw, go ahead.
so thank you, Madam Chair. So if I understand the motion is to rescind the previously approved emergency powers granted to the superintendent?
That's correct.
Okay.
They were, if you remember, they were only meant to be in place for a certain period of time where he might need to make certain decisions or purchases in the moment to protect the district.
Right. I just wanted
Madam Chair,
the motion was to approve. I just wanted to make sure that we got what the motion is actually doing for Kate or anybody that's taking minutes.
Madam Chair, I think that Mr. Bradshaw is right. We've got to be specific as to what the motion is. So I think, Mr. Bradshaw, what you just said, I believe, is the motion that Mrs. McBride intended to make. Is that correct, Mrs. McBride?
It is. Can you hear me? It is.
Yep, we heard you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, March. Is there any other discussion on this? Mr. Ramos?
Sure. I guess I don't really know. Well, I'd like to hear, I guess, from the superintendent what the current discussion is around school administration from among superintendents at the state level. I'd also like, I guess, to hear from perhaps Attorney Carroll around what's happening with superintendent emergency powers around the state as well, because I'm a little bit leery of removing emergency powers at this moment in time when I think that we are still in a relative state of flux and shifting sands when it comes to COVID. And, you know, there can be some delays and clunkiness when it comes to acting nimbly if you have to get some of the approvals that otherwise are required. So I guess, you know, my question is, you know, to Dr. Bryce, you know, what is the discussion between and among superintendents around what the expectations are for how COVID is going to continue to impact school operations in the near term? And my question to Attorney Carroll is, what have you seen other school committees doing with respect to their superintendent emergency powers that had otherwise and previously been granted?
So I'll go first and then turn it over to Attorney Carroll. There has not been, and we do weekly calls, all the superintendents, our leadership teams, we do weekly calls. There has not been discussion about revocation of those emergency powers. And I think to your point, which I think it's implied, but I'm just going to be very clear about it. I think the COVID-19 environment is such that having the ability to respond very quickly is absolutely what schools, superintendents, and districts need to do. And so I'll give you an example. So we were able to purchase air purifiers. those air purifiers are due to be delivered tomorrow. We were able to do that after checking with a local expert, confirming with another district the purchase that they made. And then we literally, I walked out of my office into the budget office and said, here's the purchase, here's what we need to do, let's make it happen today. And I think if you look at our procurement policy, which mandates everything over $5,000 except for construction related over $10,000, unless it's a health or safety exemption. I think we don't know what tomorrow brings, and having that emergency authority ensures that we're able to respond. Having said that, I think you also want to make sure how we're spending those dollars. And I can tell you, there isn't a day that goes by that we're not probably making some decision, which those emergency powers allows us to do so that we can continue to put the district on a firm footing.
In answer to your question, Mr. Ramos, other school committees are also questioning the necessity of continuing with the emergency power. And what I'm hearing is, not to disagree with Dr. Bryce, is when we first established emergency powers, we didn't know what, this was back when the pandemic first started, when we were at the beginnings, when we didn't know if we were going to get Zoom meetings together, if we thought that the superintendent was going to have to make decisions without asking school committee. What I'm hearing from other school committees is that they are also questioning whether the necessity for the emergency power now, in that we are well into the pandemic. So again, I'm hearing it from a lot of school committees where this is going on a couple of agendas within the next few weeks. However, again, we know now we can put a meeting together. So is the emergency power as necessary as it was back in April and May, when we had no idea how we were going to proceed? It's a decision of the school committee to make, and it's going to be up to you to decide whether you want to continue with it or you want to rescind it. But again, I'm hearing that there are other committees thinking of taking the same action.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Did I see Mr. Saviano's hand go up?
Yes, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank
And
you,
then,
Madam
I saw
Chairwoman.
Mrs. McBride after you. Thank
Yes.
you.
I'm thinking maybe we should rescind that and maybe authorize it by the month to see what the circumstances will be like a month from now and the next month after that, and do it on a monthly basis as part of our procedures in school committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saviano. Mrs. McBride?
You mentioned something, Dr. Bryce, that caught my ear, and I think that we can rescind this and you're still covered for COVID-related items, because COVID is a safety and health issue, and you have emergency powers under that part of our policy. So it's not taking anything that you don't already have away from you. We had expanded it so that somebody wanted us to loan something, and you gave them permission and then said, I want to be able to do that without having to come to the school committee. And that made really good sense back then. But I think if you need to do something for COVID, that's health and safety, and that's done in an immediate fashion anyway. So I think that the rest of it, we don't really need anymore. We most certainly needed it in March and April and May and June and July and August and September, but we can call meetings inside of 24 hours if it's an emergency. and you can make these types of things in an emergency and let us know that you've done it. So I think that you're covered.
Thank you, Mrs. McBride. Mr. Bradshaw?
So I guess I would just be careful because I'm looking at policy DJ and the piece of that policy that talks about that the procurement policy may be waived is for emergency repairs where the health, safety, welfare of employees and their students are threatened or where a loss of value or property would be imminent. So I think if a boiler goes out, we could go and he could make an emergency repair to get the boiler fixed or to fix a leak in the roof. But if we're making a procurement for something COVID related, I don't know that DJ 2B allows for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mrs. McBride? Did I see?
You may be right, Brian. So it may be that you want to make, you could remove the emergency powers except for COVID related expenses.
Right.
If you wanted to narrow the scope. But personally, I wouldn't have any problem with COVID-19 purchases if you have to make them that day. I mean, I get it.
Does anyone else have any other questions on this? I guess my comment would be, I do understand the reason for potentially keeping these in place, but at the same time, to Mary Ann's point, I think the intention was what it was at the beginning, and since we can meet and can gather, and we know that, I wonder if, if we would all be comfortable, given that we could have a special meeting or an emergency meeting if need be, and not have these emergency powers in place. Just a question. And I see Mr. Ramos's hand up now. Go ahead. Oh, you need to unmute, Adam.
Right. So I just wanted to come back. I just looked at the emergency powers that were the actual language of the emergency powers that we approved back in April. And the emergency powers were granted with the understanding that the authority was being provided in the absence of a timely school committee meeting. So I think that the emergency powers as they exist right now are really only that, or only to make sure that we don't have a situation where, for example, something that I've been thinking about over the course of this discussion is there's going to be a vaccine available for distribution, and it's going to be available to be distributed through the school district. And there needs to be immediate action because, because government is crazy, and sometimes they make you do things right away, and it's just not feasible to put together a meeting of this committee in order for us to be able to take advantage of that. I mean, I don't think that the emergency powers as drafted and as approved are such that we're really placing ourselves at risk. We're really just providing protections for the district to have our superintendent continue to make decisions on an as needed and really only as needed basis to make sure that we get what we need. I think that we could move forward and be maybe a little bit more demanding is the right word, or provide a little bit more of an expectation that there be an effort to put together an emergency meeting before some action gets taken. But I'm not of the view that rescinding the emergency powers while we're in the middle of what I consider to be still a very transient and unknown situation is the right move. I could see doing something like John Saviano suggested, which is having it be a regular agenda item to revisit it, but to keep it for now, and have it back on the agenda next month to see if things have changed or there's a reason to rescind it at that point. But I don't think I can vote in favor of rescinding it at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Mr. Saviano?
Yes, especially with the reoccurrence that seems to be happening in not only in Europe, but in some states in the United States. I really believe that we should go along with something like by the month type of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Saviano. Mrs. McBride?
Then I would argue that we make it policy, because if we're going to go month to month, there's always something that comes up that needs to be addressed. And we can look forward to the vaccine in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And so we can say, we can keep those until then, or we can say that we will deal with it as it comes along. But if you're going to stretch it out month to month, you might as well make it part of policy instead of being emergency powers, because there is no end to it at that point. There's always going to be something that has to be done. And I believe that the superintendent knows and is comfortable with the fact that if he has to make a major decision without a meeting, that we're not going to jump all over his case. We're going to say, okay, fine, now what do we do? Especially if, for example, he has to send us an email and say, I have to close a school, or I have to close down the district, or something of that nature. That's an administrative decision that he'll make, and he doesn't need us to tell him he can or he can't do that in the short term. But the rest of it, I think we're quite well organized and can very much take care of all the things that are going on. And part of my reasoning for that, Adam, is because I want to know what money is being spent, and I can't keep track of it because I can't tell. And so if I know when it's being spent, then I know what's being spent. And I don't really want to get into a long discussion about that tonight. I just think that we gave him the powers for a very good reason. And I don't think that reason exists anymore. So that's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Mrs. McBride. Is there anyone else who has a comment or question for Dr. Bryce? Okay. In that case, we are going to vote, and this is all in favor of rescinding the superintendent's emergency powers.
Are you asking for the vote now?
I am. So in favor of rescinding, we have Mr. Bradshaw, Mrs. Ellsworth, Mrs. McBride, Victor, Mr. Cabral, and Mr. Bento. That's 5.
And there's nothing, Madam Chair, there's nothing that would prevent us from revisiting this at the next business meeting if we in fact determine that this was the wrong action to take at this time. Is that correct?
I don't see why not, but let me just quickly get the opposed vote. Showing of hands, just to formalize things here. Opposed is Mr. Ramos, Mr. Saviano, Mrs. Reish. Go ahead, Mr. Cabral.
We have to realize that at the next meeting, we could have 5 new people on this committee. Then they may make a decision to give the emergency powers back. So just realize that, we may have taken them away, but the new people coming in may decide that maybe we should put it. So that may happen in the future. I just want to bring that forth.
Thank you, Mr. Cabral.
And Madam Chair, let's just make sure we understand that this emergency power had to do with purchasing. But I heard Mrs. McBride say, if the superintendent has to close a school or close all the schools or anything like that, he already has that power as the superintendent in the district. And those will be his calls. He doesn't need emergency to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for the public. That's an important point.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to superintendent's remarks, report out on COVID-19 related expenditures. Thank you, Dr. Bryce.
Thank you. So I would like to start by saying that we are in some ways fortunate to have received significant funding from the state for COVID-related expenses, broken into two areas. One is called Impact Aid. One is called ESSR, Elementary and Secondary Education Funds. One was $581,000. The other was $485,000, for a total of about $1,067,000. Now, unfortunately, we also think that some of those funds may have been funds that we would have normally received through state funding that we may not get, but that they gave it to us in federal funding, which is somewhat restricted as to what you could do with it. And so in this regards, it was only those things that could be utilized that were directly tied to COVID expenses. And so I'm just going to walk you through a high level look at that. I can also tell you that of the $1,067,000, we have approximately, I think, a little under $1,500 of funding left. And we have been very focused on using these funds first. And then I think it was either Friday, we found out that it is likely that we're going to be awarded $56,000 additional dollars from the school building authority that would have been used for school construction. They are changing that and they took $4 million out of that fund, and they are giving each district a pro rata share of those funds, and our share is $56,000. So I'll just go through this so that the school committee as well as the public can get a sense of the things that we've purchased utilizing these funds because it really is helping us to operate. So in terms of salaries, we've certainly utilized some for summer school stipends for staff, as well as for teaching and learning fellows, nurse technicians, which are so we have teaching and learning fellows in all of our buildings. They are long-term substitutes that show up every single day. They are assigned. Some of them are actually leading classes because the teachers are out on long-term leave. In other places, we are using them and assigning them to different places in the school on a daily basis. Nurse techs have been really helpful in helping our nurses handle the daily work that they're doing, as well as the work of checking students and sending students home where necessary. We also have lunch aids that have come out of that. Of course, you can't have salaries without having benefits, and so we have those benefits also included. In terms of purchasing things like the tents that are on our campuses have been purchased through, I believe, October. EnviroClean, and so we had a situation where we closed the building. We actually sent a company in to sanitize that building. We've utilized it for additional licenses for things like Zoom, for distance learning bundles, for curricular materials through Curriculum Associates. We've purchased hotspots for students. And you'll see this, very interesting. We also are contracting with a local laundromat. We have gowns that some of our staff are utilizing when they are working with some of our students that need toileting. And so they use 1 gown per student. They take it off, they put it in a bag. Our carrier picks them up, takes them to the laundromat where they are washed and sanitized, and then they are returned. And so we can get 10 washes out of those gowns. And we found that that was actually cheaper than utilizing totally disposable gowns. Automatic temperature controls has been in our buildings and working to make sure that all of our equipment is operating at high levels. We know, and I've mentioned multiple times, the increases in Chromebook purchases. And so we have purchased, I want to say 2,800 Chromebooks this year. 1,600 have arrived. 1,200 are due to be delivered, we hoped, in December. But it looks like the supply chain is getting even more backed up. And so we don't know if they're going to still arrive in mid-December, but it looks like they may get pushed back into sometime in early 2021. Just other high, we've purchased everything. You see things like HEPA filters for air scrubbers, desk shields, disposable masks, sanitizer. We meet twice a week. There is a group of staff that meets twice a week to review our PPE order and to make sure that we have enough gloves and masks and disposable gowns or washable gowns, hand sanitizer, all of those things that have made our ability as a district to work. And so that has really been very helpful. We continue to order those things, and those things, now that we have expended these dollars, it's good that we're going to get an additional $56,000 so that those funds, those dollars can be used to continue to purchase some of these materials. And you'll notice that some are purchased on impact aid, some are purchased on ESSR. It all depends on the requirements of those 2 funding sources. They are restricted, so you can't use them to purchase everything. Everything has to be related to COVID expenses. One of them expires in December 2020. So that's why you had to use those funds for staffing early. And so we've done that. More PPE, just equipment. So if you've ever gone past our school and you see fans in the rooms, in the windows, you see that where we purchased our fans. You also see our air purifiers, which we've purchased, paid for out of both impact aid and the ESSR funds. Additional Chromebook cases for the increase in Chromebooks that we have. Outdoor Wi-Fi, because when we had tents, we needed that. Now, interesting. So we also wrote 2 grants. We wrote a substitute grant. So some of the substitute funding that we're going to utilize, we can now put on that grant. I believe that grant is approximately $34,000. And we are going to, even though it's going to be cold, we believe that outdoor education will be viable as long as it's dry outside. It could be chilly, it could be in its 40s. We're going to ask that students come to school in making sure that they have a coat and a hat. But we expect that there will still be some opportunity for outside learning at all of our campuses. And this really shows at this point, we had about $2,600 left. We made some more purchases and we're down to $1,600 left in the 2 grants. And with that, I will take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. Mrs. Ellsworth.
Dr. Bryce, can you just send that to us? We don't have that updated. Thank you.
Absolutely. You know what we'll send you? We will send you the approved, because we had to get these approved by RIDE. And so we've got 2 documents. I'm going to ask Dr. Santa. Dr. Santa, could you send those to Kate, and Kate will get them to the school committee.
Mr. Bradshaw.
So question, so now that we have just voted to rescind the emergency powers and these purchases will now need to go back through committee, do you have, assuming that we won't be having another meeting before the election and knowing that there are going to be new members of the school committee in November, do you have enough of what you need now to get us through the next time we have a meeting of the full school committee, even if it's at the new organizational meeting or shortly thereafter, and we have to make those approvals for purchases at that time? Do you have enough of what you need between now and then?
Absolutely. And the other thing I would mention is that don't forget, we still have the ability to purchase up to $5,000 for materials. And so we'll be making another purchase for PPE materials tomorrow. It's an ongoing process. We know that we utilize hand sanitizer and different materials. And so spray bottles with the cleanser, the cleaning agent that we receive from the state, paper towels. And so we continue to replenish those things just so that we never are completely out of stock.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Bryce, if, as Ms. Ellsworth said, you could have that sent along to the school committee, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And with that, I will thank everyone for coming and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Saviano, seconded by Mr. Bradshaw. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night now.